Good morning and a very warm welcome to this session on teaching of English, making a lesson plan. This session is related to teaching of English, pedagogy of English, and I will be discussing with you different steps which are involved in the making of a lesson plan. So let me start with the first slide first. As you can see that in the teaching of English, we've been talking about how effectively as a teacher you can develop these skills with the learners. We've talked about listening, speaking, reading and writing. So this particular PowerPoint presentation also will be focusing on the development of these skills. The second thing which I want to share with you is this, that my presentation is actually divided into three parts. The first part, I will be talking about the general principles and the guidelines which underpin the developing of a lesson plan irrespective of the topic. So what is it? What do I mean by this when I say this? What I mean is that irrespective of the topic that you choose for developing a particular lesson plan or for transacting a particular topic in the classroom, there are certain things which you need to remember, and these should become the guiding principles or the guidelines as far as development or creation of a lesson plan is concerned. This will be the first part. These are generic things, but nevertheless very important. The second part will be actually looking at critically a lesson plan which I have got on the PowerPoint presentation here. We will be, you and I together will be discussing the different features of this particular lesson plan which is there. This is basically to examine how the principles that I have talked about in the beginning, how does this particular lesson plan incorporate those principles and philosophical guidelines. So we will be very critically looking at this. And finally, the third part will be concretely a discussion on how to develop a lesson plan. So there are three parts to it: the philosophical principles, looking at one actual lesson plan which has been developed by somebody else, and thirdly, how to infer, how to deduce certain principles for ourselves so that we can develop a lesson plan effectively for an effective transaction in the classroom. And like I said earlier, the first PowerPoint which you have in front of you is about the four skills that this particular course, which is Pedagogy of English, talks about. So we have to keep in mind that our lesson plans also need to revolve around the development of these four skills. Most of the time we will be focusing on these four skills. So let us move now to the next slide. So yeah, I will skip this for the moment and I'll go on to the objectives of teaching and learning English. Recall the first slide that you had just seen. I had talked about the four skills. So when we are talking about the objectives of teaching learning of English, we are talking about listening. What does listening mean? Listening actually means that the student should be able to listen to verbal and non-verbal communication in a non-linear manner and then comprehend that and draw inferences. What does this mean? It means that the ability to listen to verbal and non-verbal cues in a manner which is not flowing in a linear manner, but he should be or she should be able to understand that communication and draw and deduce inferences from that. That is what we call the development of the listening skill here. So similarly, we have listed out here different skills. The speaking skill should actually aim at the development of being able to hold meaningful conversation in a variety of situations. It means that the learner after having acquired the speaking skill, should be able to hold meaningful conversation in different settings, in a variety of situations, be it in the classroom or in a lecture hall, or while making a presentation of the project, or talking to his peer group, and so on and so forth. The third skill which has to be developed is the skill of reading. The skill of reading actually should aim to develop the habit of independent reading, so that the learner is able to construct meaning by drawing inferences. Whatever he or she reads, that should not be just a surface reading, but it should be a reading which should lead to the construction of meaning. The learner should be able to draw inferences, and the reading of the text should be such that the learner should be able to connect or try to recall his or her previous knowledge, so that the text can be connected with whatever he or she knows from previous knowledge. And also it is very important that the learner should be able to read the text critically and ask questions while reading. If you look at this particular objective, you will find that we are here not talking about any surface reading. We are talking about the engagement of the learner with the text by making a connection to her previous knowledge, and also engaging with the text in a critical manner. What does it mean when we say a critical manner? We should be able to ask questions while we are going through the text and look at certain things, try to find answers, and that is what we mean a critical engagement or a meaningful engagement with the text while reading. The skill of writing should aim at giving a particular kind of a competency to the learner, so that it enables her to write for a variety of purposes and situations, ranging from informal to formal. So there are various forms of writing, as we all know. These are informal. Informal writing is like writing a letter to a friend, writing a letter to your parents. Formal writing, on the other hand, means writing a letter to the principal, writing a letter to the municipality, or writing a letter to the newspaper editor, and so on and so forth. So the competency should enable the learners to write for a variety of purposes. Enhancing creativity. Now, this is a very important objective also, and it flows from all the 4 skills that we have talked about. The learners should be able to develop creative expressions from their content. What does this mean? It means that the learners should be able to express, they should be able to formulate their own thoughts and feelings. When we say that it should enhance the creativity, we mean that it should lead the learner to express herself, express her feelings, her thoughts, and articulate them effectively. Coming to the last objective, we find that enhancing sensitivity is an important objective also, as far as the teaching learning of English is concerned. And here we mean that the learners develop sensitivity. Where do they develop sensitivity from? We are here talking about the core values which are embedded in the literary texts. We are talking about values like honesty, like justice, like being fair, like being open, like looking at equality as a value, and so on and so forth. So enhancing sensitivity will develop an attitude in the learners, for instance, to view the classroom as a group of learners who are equal in their status, irrespective of where they come from. It can also develop attitudes like keeping the environment clean. It also helps in developing aesthetics amongst the learners, so keeping the school beautiful, and so on and so forth. So basically, when we are talking about the objectives of teaching learning of English, we need to focus on this. And like I said earlier, irrespective of whatever the topic that you choose to develop a lesson plan, either in the activity which follows this presentation or later on, subsequently in your classroom, we should be guided and we should remember that these are the objectives that we have to keep in mind. But these will also then subsequently translate themselves into learning objectives, and we will talk about that later. Let's get on to the next slide here. It's talking about the pedagogical practices. What do we mean by pedagogical practices? We mean basically those techniques of teaching which enhance the effectiveness of both the teacher and the learner. So these are the practices that we need to keep in mind while developing a lesson plan with regard to the teaching of English. Let's look at them one by one and try to understand what is meant over here. The first one says that learning language in natural settings and learning listening, speaking, reading and writing together is an important, significant pedagogical practice. What does this mean? This means that language is always learnt in a natural setting. It is nothing which is contrived or which has to be forced upon or has to be developed in something which is very different to where the classroom teaching is taking place and which is the natural setting for the learners and the teacher. Second thing which is being said here is that the skills of listening, speaking, reading and writing have to be taken together. These have to be developed together. In developing a lesson plan, therefore, when we write our learning objectives, we need to look at these taking place not in isolation but together. So which means that listening skill can take place along with speaking. Reading skill also can take place along with the development of the writing skills. The second thing is very important, and I think most of us need to look at our practice in the context of this particular point, which relates to multilingualism. In the context of English speaking especially, it becomes very important because most of us feel that while we are teaching English, we need only to focus on English. But that is something that we need to dispel as a myth, because studies have shown that first thing which is important to remember is that none of us is monolingual, which means that none of us is actually able to speak only in one language. That's not true. We speak in more than one language, which means that we are bilinguals, and many a times and more often than not, we speak in multiple languages. There are people who will speak in their mother tongue, they will speak in the second language, they will also speak in a language which does not even belong to their region. So multilingualism is a reality as far as all of us are concerned, and it is more of a reality in the classroom where we are teaching English. The fact that the students come from multiple languages should not be looked upon as something which is a negative factor in our teaching English. In fact, it should be taken up as a resource. We should have some kind of an idea about the different kind of languages which the learners bring with them to the English classroom, and then we should devise strategies to get certain words from them in their own languages and see and bring it along in the teaching of another word in English language. What I am trying to say here is that we should aim to develop something like a language wall. What is a language wall? We pick up a sentence in English and then we go around the class and ask them how that what is the meaning or what is the equivalent of that word in their language. And some kind of a chart or some kind of a board is displayed in the classroom where the English, that particular word in English is also displayed with words from different languages. And therefore what happens is that we see that competence building in English takes place with the help of different languages which are prevalent in the classroom. So this one has to remember even as we develop our lesson plans, that how can we use multilingualism as a resource. Now, the next thing which is important is that when we talk about language, I think language development, all of you will agree that it's not just defined to the fact that a lecture is taking place in the classroom, a teacher is talking, the teacher is making a presentation, and the students are sitting and listening. It also goes beyond the textbook and creating an environment which is rich in inputs, where the teacher brings to the classroom not only the textbooks but magazines. More often than not, these magazines can be chosen by the learners because they will choose according to their interests. They will also see the difficulty levels and so on, and also whether it fits in with their context or not. So bringing the textbooks, magazines, newspapers, audio cassettes, and so on and so forth, and also a variety of texts, not only novels but poems, collection of autobiographies or short stories, and so on and so forth, and other authentic materials. These can be brought into, and these should be brought into the classrooms to make the environment rich in the language which is going to be acquired by the learner. And again, the input-rich communicational environment is an important factor which we should not lose sight of even while developing a lesson plan. Important thing again which I want to highlight here is a different point, and this is about the language across the curriculum. Many of you must be already aware that we have also devised a particular course in language across the curriculum, where we are talking about the fact that every class, every subject is initially to begin with a language class. While studying mathematics, while studying science, while studying social sciences, it is about the language. We read the language of the science, we read the language of mathematics, we read social sciences. How do we understand? How do we comprehend? By reading the language, and so on and so forth. So basically, language cuts across the curriculum. While developing a lesson plan, you can further elaborate whatever you are trying to teach by taking the concepts from different subjects and putting them in your lesson plan, so that this relationship of language across different subjects is also established. And when we look at that lesson plan which I was talking about, we'll see that how this can be done. Subsequently, also we have a session on talking about how language actually cuts across the curriculum, cuts across different curricular subjects. Last important point to remember here is this, that vocabulary and grammar should always be learnt in a context. If you recall, our learning in our times, this used to be taught very differently. We used to have a grammar class in which we would be taught grammar, and then we would have a vocabulary class in which we would be taught vocabulary. It was the grammar part was never embedded within the main lesson. It was not seen as something within a lesson plan or within a particular topic or within a chapter. So one would have a textbook which would have the different chapters, poems, so on and so forth. And on the other hand, one would have a grammar class or have a textbook on grammar, Wren and Martin, for instance, has been one of the very important grammar books, which many of us have gone through. So what we are trying to say here is that it also has to be learnt only in a context and should not be taught separately. Let's go to the next slide. Now this is very important and has to be remembered again. What is it that we want our English class to look like? We have to remember that, because that is what will guide us to develop the lesson plan in a particular manner. We are here talking about our entire teaching of English course is based on the principle that teaching learning has to be learner-centered. Here, the learners have to be given opportunities to observe, explore, to question you, do activities hands-on, and share their experiences. So we move away from the teacher-centered mode, where the teacher is the main person who is actually disseminating knowledge, and the students are sitting and just receiving or assimilating knowledge. We are moving away from that practice. And that's important to remember, because all our activities, all our tasks will be based on this basic underlying principle that our classroom is a learner-centered classroom. But you might even ask a question that if we are talking about a learner-centered classroom, where is the role of the teacher? So that's a good question. The role of the teacher then only becomes as a facilitator. The teacher actually scaffolds or provides help to the learner to construct their own knowledge. So while learners are engaged in construction of knowledge, the teacher also engages with them and at different opportunities provides or helps them and facilitates them in the construction of the knowledge. The next slide is talking, the next point is talking about that activities around listening, speaking, reading and writing have to be developed around this particular approach. I have already talked about the construction of knowledge. Now group work and individual activities, we can devise our tasks accordingly. Some of them can be individual, some of them can be group based and so on and so forth. So our English classroom should incorporate all these things. Here we also have to make the learners responsible for their learning, and that's the last point. How do we make them responsible for their own learning process? By giving them opportunities to talk about what they have learned, what they have not learned, what is it that, how did they learn that, talking about it, sharing their experiences, learning from their peer group, and so on and so forth. So autonomous learners, responsible learners are also important and should be an objective while developing the lesson plan. So in a nutshell, these are the basic principles which should guide the construction or the development or the planning or designing of a lesson plan. And like I said earlier, this should cut across any topic, anything that you intend to teach in the classroom. Let me just move back now to another slide here, and I want you to engage a bit with this slide. We are talking about, as you can find out here, there is a 5E model of lesson plan, and this has been actually suggested by Robert Beebe. What are these 5 E's? We will begin with engage. As you can see, that's the first point. Please also remember that this goes in a clockwise direction, and it is always useful to go step by step in the same way as it has been put up here in the diagram. So that means that the first point we are talking about here is engaging the students. What does it mean? What does it mean when we say that we are engaging the students? Basically, this I would say is the first step, or this opens, or this is the beginning of the learning process itself. This is basically capturing the student's interest. We draw the learner's curiosity by not forcing them, but by inviting the students to talk about what they already know, what their prior knowledge and experience has been about that particular topic that we are going to teach them in the class. So we invite their opinions, and by doing this, we are opening their minds for the learning process, which is just about to begin. What kind of strategies should we use for this process where engagement can take place? We can get the attention of the students by asking open-ended questions. What do you think of this? Have you seen this before? Where did you see this? What was your experience? What was the context in which you saw? So basically, just getting them to talk about that particular topic in relation to what they have already experienced before. And this is important because now, as we all know, that learning takes place by connecting what is to be learned with what already has been learned. So prior learning, previous learning plays an extremely important part in learning whatever the teacher intends the students to learn. The second part is, the second point here we are talking about is explore. Exploring is following from the first stage of engagement. There are questions which come up from the first stage itself. Here we encourage the students to develop some kind of a big picture about the phenomena that we are talking about or we are discussing in the classroom. Again, they are pushed to challenge their previous knowledge. What is it that they have learned and how is it different now? So they ask questions by exploration, and new ideas are created in the process, but we give them enough scope for exploration, and this can be done by giving them also more materials so that they can engage in active exploration. The third point here we are talking about is explanation. Again, the students here explain the phenomena and the new knowledge that they have gained. We can encourage them to give their own version or summary of what has been explored. They can explain to the rest of the class. There are different ways of explanation. They can do it through a chart, by presenting it on a chart, on the blackboard, on the whiteboard, or wherever. And they can also discuss with their peers, and in groups also this can take place, and the groups can be asked to write explanation of what has been explained and of what has been explored, and explain it to the rest of the class. After that we come to elaboration. Here they have to actually apply their knowledge towards the new situation, to the new situation, practical situation, real life situation in most of the cases, so that their knowledge becomes more sound, it is more deepened, and so on and so forth. So elaboration will be taking place. We can give them activities of problem solving and so on and so forth, so they can actually elaborate and apply their knowledge. Finally, we come to evaluation, where the students reflect on their knowledge and the learning process and assess whatever has been done. The teacher also evaluates, not in the sense of assessment and evaluation, which is quite different, but the teacher tries to get an idea about what the students have learned and what the students have not learned. And it is at this point, and also at the point of explanation and elaboration also, where the teacher can provide that scaffolding role by looking at the gaps in understanding and trying to remove those gaps, or trying to explain in a manner so that the children become much more deep in their understanding of whatever has been discussed in the classroom. So this 5E model actually is the basis, or should become the basis of the lesson plan which we develop as teachers, because like I said earlier, we are talking about a learner-centered classroom. We are also talking about construction of knowledge, and we are talking about the active engagement of the learner in developing knowledge, in understanding, comprehending things, and also in the development of the competencies and skills that we have already talked about as the objectives of teaching of English. Let me now come to the second part of my presentation, which is about just 1 minute. I think I should not miss one of the slides here is about the techniques. What are the techniques that we can, when we are talking about all these processes, all these phases, all these stages of the lesson plan, and we are engaging our learners, how is it, what are the collaborative and cooperative activities that we can make use of while engaging the learners in different engaging the learners and helping them to construct knowledge on their own. It can be done through pair work, it can be done through a debate, which is an individual activity. We can have group projects, we can also have role play, we can have portfolios, oral and written composition, discussions, and giving them assignments in the classroom or take-home assignments, and it depends on how you plan the lesson. So basically, I have just elaborated different techniques, different strategies which can be used in the classroom and which can become a part of the lessons that you develop for teaching English. Second part here, that is the end of the first part. We have already discussed the guiding principles, the philosophical underlying tenets which should inform the development of the lesson plan. Now I will come to an actual lesson plan which has been developed elsewhere, and through this I intend to carry forward all the principles that I have been talking about. I intend to highlight those, and I would also urge upon you to look at these very carefully and see where exactly all these things that we have talked about, where do they come into existence as far as this particular lesson plan is concerned. The first thing, as you can see on your screen, is a picture. What is this picture? What is the title here? The title is The Dream Comes True. And what is the dream? Does it give you some kind of an indication? Does the picture give you any kind of an indication? I think if you look at it closely, we find that there is Edmund Hillary and Tenzing, these two people who had the Sherpa who had and the New Zealand person who had climbed Mount Everest, and these were the first people who were able to scale the Mount Everest. So we will be looking at how a particular lesson has been developed with this particular theme. The second part here, second slide shows that Tenzing Norgay and Edmund Hillary, after their picture, the teacher has been able to list the learning outcomes. And here the activity which has been taken up actually relates to reading. We are here focusing on the development of the skill of reading. And as you know, there are three processes. We look at always reading as comprising of three parts or three processes. The first one is pre-reading, the second is while reading, and the third is post-reading. So on your screens, if you see, you will find here that this is about the pre-reading. So pre-reading is a stage which facilitates the reading because it prepares and opens our mind to what is going to follow. So in this particular topic, the teacher has taken pre-reading. Pre-reading also has to be done with the learners. You will be reading about that in the lessons, in the materials which is there. In one of the blocks, we have already discussed about that. In the left-hand margin, if you see, there are learning outcomes. The teacher has been able to specify the learning or outcomes as that the children will be able to read the passage with comprehension. They will be able to speak about the central idea of the passage. They will be able to connect the main idea with their own achievements. They will be able to develop vocabulary in context, and they will be able to develop grammar in context. Very quickly, let me just run through the learning outcomes. Do you find that these match with the principles that I have been talking about earlier? At least I can find there is some kind of a guidance, which has come about from that previous section. Where do those principles figure in this particular slide? Look at developing grammar in context. I had already talked about it. Second thing, grammar and vocabulary have to be developed in context. I had talked about that. Also, I had talked about that reading with comprehension is important when we are developing. It is not about reading only superficially. It is about that the learner is able to comprehend. Third thing which you will find here and which is interesting is, again, which had been mentioned here, that the skills have to be come together. They have to figure in together. They cannot be done in isolation. So therefore, we see that the first objective is reading. The second objective is speak about the central idea. So reading is one of the objectives. Speaking is also another objective. So we find there are two skills that have been taken up by the teacher here. Let's come to the second column where you can find strategies written over here. And here the strategies, by that we mean that what are the resources and the materials which have been brought into the classroom for this particular lesson. In the pre-reading process, like I said, pre-reading is a stage which prepares the learner to read and engage with the reading material. In the pre-reading here, the teacher has been able to bring the picture of Mount Everest and picture of various adventure sports like mountaineering, rafting, canoeing, surfing, skiing, so on and so forth. And then the teacher has also prepared some discourse questions which the teacher will ask to the students. They could be open-ended, they could also promote some kind of a precise answer and so on and so forth. So this is the strategies through which the teacher intends to go through this process. Classroom interaction has been designed like that the teacher will begin the class by showing pictures of various adventure sports. If you can see on your monitor, there are pictures of rock climbing, river rafting, canoeing and also scuba diving. So these have been brought up here because there is a connection which is to be formed here between mountaineering as an adventure sport and these particular sports which are there. So the kind of questions which can be asked here are, what are the similarities and differences between the different kinds of sports? What are the qualities that a sports person should have to play any game and so on? Here prior learning also has to be established, and we will see that how the teacher has tried to do that. The teacher can actually ask the students, what are the games that you play? Have you climbed mountains? Do you think it's an interesting sport? What do you like in that? What are the qualities personally that you feel are important so that you can take up such tough sports? Why do you think that mountaineering probably can be done as a teamwork, or adventure sports actually are looked upon as sports which involve more than one individual? These are some kind of things where the student may be able to recall from his or her previous experience the nature of adventure sports. After that, we see that there has been, in the right hand side, you will find that assessment of the while giving the lecture also, the assessment of the learners can be done simultaneously, and that can be done by asking questions like qualities of a sport person, differences, similarities, like I have already said. So this can go on and on alongside. Let's move on to the next slide here. Again, this is talking about the pre-reading process only. Same things here we are talking about, but an important thing, we have talked about the qualities. Here we can talk about the inner qualities of the person. What are the why is it that besides physical toughness there has to be a mental toughness, there has to be a positive attitude, patience, never giving up, perseverance, and so on and so forth. Mountaineering also means that equipment has to be sound, there has to be a discipline, team spirit, and so on and so forth. Important thing to remember here is one more point which I had talked about earlier and which I will take your attention to. The last paragraph, we are talking about going across the curriculum. Here, because the topic is such, it is about the mountains, it is about Himalayas. So very clearly and very quickly we can figure out, we can infer that here there is an element of geography. The discipline of geography we can evoke that, and we can discuss things like features of mountains and certain vocabulary, rugged mountain, plain mountain, smooth mountain, so on and so forth. Certain things from the discipline of geography can be brought into certain specific technical words from that particular discipline can be brought into focus here while discussing the pre-reading here. While stressing the importance of pre-reading, we can bring in another discipline. This also one had talked about earlier. Two things now we have to talk, this teacher is talking about is, one is assessment for learning, and the teacher has also here kept into mind the fact that there is something known as assessment as learning. So assessment for learning, we see that how this can be used as a feedback tool for the teacher and also for the learner. This is very different from assessment of learning or assessment as learning. So this kind of a assessment for learning gives a indication to the teacher. Here the teacher is thinking that, through all these activities encompassing thinking, listening, whether they have been able to express their ideas coherently, logically, confidently or not, they will be able to gather where are the gaps. Here, for instance, the teacher has been able to find out that Nikita can speak in groups, but she hesitates to speak in front of the class. So what does the teacher do there? How does the teacher fill in that gap? By giving more opportunities to Nikita to speak in the classroom. Now, assessment as learning or assessment of learning. We can have a checklist here. If we are assessing the listening skills or speaking skills or reading skills, whatever we are doing, we can prepare a checklist. We can also give some kind of a test that one will talk about later. Now let's come to the second phase here, and I will like to go through it very quickly. While reading is the second phase. Like I said, there are three phases. I will just confine to two phases here. The second phase is the while reading. While reading is when actually the reading of the text is taking place. Here in this case, it's the story about these two gentlemen who had conquered Everest first. So the teacher can do this in different ways. There are strategies like teacher can read from the text, or after reading, the teacher models the reading, for the learners. The learners also see how the reading has to take place, following how the teacher has read the lesson. The learners can do this activity of reading individually, or they can do it in pair. We can divide the chapter into chunks. We can ask them to do it silently also. So these are the different ways. Then we can ask the questions from whatever sections they have learned. Here, the questions which are coming up is that why are they carrying oxygen with them? And this relates to the paragraphs in the chapter. There are multiple answers to that question. The answers can be expected along these lines. The learner has to pick up one of the answers. Similarly, another question also has been, another two questions have been framed here, and we can give them more choices so that they can pick from there. Again, it is all up to you how you do it. These are only examples. This is only an exemplar. So finally, while reading, assessment of learning and assessment for learning, we have come again. While reading exercises will assess the comprehension levels. For this purpose, the teacher can devise, like I said earlier, multiple kind of varieties of assessment here, like true, false, gap filling, sentence completion, web charts, tables, MCQs, and so on and so forth. And assessment for learning can be done again by the teacher by looking at individual learners and seeing on your criteria of assessment for learning, where do they stand? Teacher might come to the conclusion that Rahul cannot read fluently and he needs practice. So for that, we can devise a strategy of breaking the text into small chunks so that Rahul is able to read without getting into the can develop fluency of reading by focusing or engaging with smaller chunks of the lesson there. So these are the ways in which we can assess the learning of as a feedback tool for ourselves, and also we can assess learning with regard to seeing whether the learning objectives have been fulfilled or not. So this brings me to the completion of the second part of my presentation today, which I said that I will like to go through a particular lesson which has been developed by a particular teacher. The lesson, as you saw, was on reading, and it was about a dream coming true, which is basically how two people conquered Mount Everest for the first time. In the reading part, the teacher here has focused on two activities, pre-reading and while reading. We looked at the learning outcomes for pre-reading and while reading. We also looked at the strategies, and we also looked at how the assessment has taken place throughout. One thing which is very clear here is, when we are talking about developing a lesson plan, all processes have to go on simultaneously in our minds here. We need to be thinking of learning objectives. We need to be thinking about how to accomplish those learning objectives, and then assessing them, seeing whether these have been accomplished or not, and what are the gaps which are there, how to fill up the gaps in learning, what are the different strategies we need to employ for that. Finally, just in about 10 minutes, let me come to the third part, which is about developing a lesson plan. For me, and I think even for you and for all of us who know that teaching is much more than just development of a template which can guide us to deliver a lecture in a classroom, we know that a lesson plan, after all, is not about a fixed template, but it is about basically helping us to plan. It is almost like a roadmap which helps us to plan our objectives, how these objectives will be fulfilled, and how will we know that these objectives have been fulfilled or not. So lesson plan actually is a lot of planning, which takes place before the lesson is delivered in the classroom. In fact, it will not be an exaggeration to say that most of the lesson planning takes place before the classroom. What are the important steps which we have to keep in mind while developing a lesson plan? Let me just come back again to this fact that there are three parts to development of a lesson plan. To a lesson plan, let's say, there are three parts. One is before the class, whatever we do before the class, during the class, and then finally after the class is complete or at the time of the closure of the class. So let's see how it goes. Before the class, I think most importantly is to identify the learning objectives. How do we identify the learning objectives? These have to be identified and stated clearly in tasks like describe, analyze, compare, contrast, evaluate, and so on and so forth. So these have to be stated clearly in tasks such as the ones that I mentioned. These have to correspond with essential learning goals. Third important thing is that these have to be achievable. What do we mean by achievable? In terms of the resources, like different kind of things that we had talked about earlier, inputs, resources we had talked about. And second thing is the time as a resource. So this planning has to be organized along achievable goals, limits which are set by our time and the kind of resources that we are planning to deploy in the classroom. The fourth thing is that they have to be accessible along tangible lines. Very concretely, we should be able to find out whether it is an assessment for learning or an assessment of learning. We have to find out whether learning has taken place or not, what are the gaps in learning. So these have to be tangible. These have to also apply to the whole class. So they have to include all the learners, different learners, but all of them have to be included into the learning objectives that we are planning. And so first stage would be, I would say, is identifying the learning objectives. The second stage then would follow the first stage, which is, we have already talked about the learning objectives. How do we plan the specific learning activities? Because that is how we will achieve those objectives, through our learning activities. Learning activities will be like, if we want the students to interact with the content, we can devise activities like organizing a lecture, a quiz, or something like that. If the activity is peer interaction, we can have a debate, we can have a discussion. If the activity, for instance, is problem solving, here we can use a case study method, a concept mapping, and so on and so forth. So depending on the kind of activity that we are learning activities that we are planning, we can think of the ways of actually going about it in the classroom. So now the other thing which is important is that how do we do it in the classroom? What do we do in the classroom? We actually implement all this in the classroom. We share this in the classroom. This is what is transacted in the classroom. And like I said, in a learner-centered classroom, this has to be done very differently. So we have to think of ways. You can choose from so many ways that we have been discussing, that how this can be transacted. How will you transact this, keeping in mind that the learner has to be the focus in the classroom? Accordingly, your strategies, accordingly, your activities will get defined, keeping that particular objective of letting the learner construct her knowledge in the classroom. Finally, we come to assessing student learning. Here we are talking about the number of assessments. In CCE, we can decide what is the number that we should be having. We can talk about the types of assessment. Then we can have rubrics for ourselves. We can have the criteria to assess. For instance, for reading, what should be the rubric? For writing, what should be the rubric? This will also correspond to the learning objectives or the objectives of teaching English that I had talked about earlier. And lastly, very important, when we are assessing, we also have to have a provision of feedback, because otherwise, if we are not giving the feedback to the learner, elaborate feedback to the learner, not only in terms of the marks or the grades that he or she has obtained, the learner will not be able to overcome the problems that he or she has been facing. So that is very important. Finally, I will conclude with this particular thing, which I call the after the class reflection for the teacher. That's very important. While you've transacted the lesson in the classroom, what do you do after that? You have done everything. I think what you need to do after that is take out some time for reflection of how did the lesson go. We talk about reflective teachers, but we do not have the time, or we do not think that it's very important to incorporate reflection into our day-to-day teaching. But this, I think, is a very important aspect where we are talking about assessment of learning for the learner and assessment for learning. I think the same assessment of learning and for learning goes for us also as teachers, where we look into things which did not go well. Was I able to initiate the prior learning activities well? I should ask myself this question. If not, what is it which was lacking? Then, were the visuals suitable? Were the students able to make connections with the kind of visuals that I brought into the classroom? Was it relevant to the social context of the learners? Again, this is a question to ask. Was group learning or a group project a good technique? Should I have given an individual activity there? Was my communication good? Was I well prepared for the lesson? These are some of the important things that we all need to do at the end of the lesson. I think I will conclude here. I have discussed quite elaborately the different aspects of developing a lesson plan, and I would just conclude by saying that initially when we start, I think we need to have a very good clarity of the basic principles and the basic objectives of why we are doing what we are doing. And here what comes to help is about the nature of English. Like I said, the pedagogical practices we should keep in mind. We should keep in mind the objectives and so on and so forth. Then we should get into the particular activity of developing a lesson plan. A lesson plan is not to be looked upon in isolation. it derives from various different understandings that we need to have. And after a lesson plan has been developed, before the lesson plan is to be developed, we need to keep in mind that we are aiming at developing autonomous learners. We are looking at ourselves only as facilitators, and here we want our learners to become finally responsible for their learning. And I think I should conclude. The rest of the activity probably you have to do with your facilitators at your homes. In case there are any problems, in case you want to ask questions, you can send your questions through mails and so on and so forth, and we will be very happy to take them up. So I would like to, at this point, thank you very much, and I hope you are all enjoying yourselves, and I hope you are doing a lot of practical work which is going to help you when you go back to your classroom teaching. So all the best to you, and enjoy the rest of the activities. Thank you very much.